Good morning, Dr. Youssef. Hi, and thank you so much for
Good,
joining. Please, would you like to start with the rest of the class?
good morning, everybody. First of all, thank you very much, Dr. Malak, for the invitation. It's a pleasure and an honor to be with your class today. I hope I can be of any help or shed the light on things that the students may have and questions. Let's make it very informal. It's not, I didn't prepare any presentation because I think students are tired of presentations. So let's move forward with a just smooth conversation, putting my perspective on organizational behavior during these difficult times, and maybe shedding the light on examples that we have at CIMMO and the organization that I preside over, and how are we managing the crisis during COVID-19? An organization that, by the way, Dr. Malak Attias is the Chief Education Officer as well. So the ground is very common.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
So let's do it this way. I think Malak, I have Dr. Malak. I have how long is the 1 hour, 30 minutes?
1 hour 30. It's up to you, Doctor.
Okay, so we have period of time of 60 minutes. First, I'm not sure if Dr. Malak introduced me, but I will introduce myself.
Please.
So my name is Youssef. I am the president and the co-chair of the Chartered Institute of Marketing Management of Ontario, an organization that was created by a private law of the province of Ontario, the Parliament of Ontario, in 1988, and has the mandate over organizing the profession of the professional set of the marketing profession in Ontario. And then since then, we've been working. We relaunched the institution in 2016. Dr. Malak Attias is the Chief Education Officer. She's responsible for the continuing education part of it. And also, I am professor and program coordinator of the marketing degree at Humber College. I do have some seats in, I'm the co-founder and vice chair of the Federation of Canadian Brazilian Businesses, and also I'm a member of the board of directors of Polycultural Immigration and Community Services. We changed the name now to Polyculture Community Services. So these are a bunch of not-for-profit organizations. I hold a PhD in management and postdoctoral studies in business administration. So academically, I have a couple of publications, but my focus, I'm a much more practitioner as a executive, you know, and then I bring the theoretical part from marketing standpoint. So this is, and I'm Brazilian, by the way. So I was born and raised in Brazil. I don't look like, but that's who I am. To obviously Middle Eastern parents. I immigrated 10 years ago, like many of you, probably not 10 years ago, but I'm a newcomer to Canada. So I would love to share my story with you as well. I know that we are having this class this way because of COVID-19, obviously. And I think we are all impacted by not your generation, as far as I can see this much, because social distancing, based on my kids' experience here at home, I see that it's not a big issue for you guys. So you are not practicing as much as you are supposed to be. But I'm not pushing hard on you. This is how your generation sees these things. And obviously, when we start talking about COVID-19, we see a couple of variables that we need to shed the light upon when it comes to organizational behavior standpoint. And I know that Dr. Malak has talked to you about organizational change, you know, and there's a chapter on this and how organizations behave in certain situations. So first we have to understand natures of the organization. And that's my perspective, obviously. And the nature of the organization, as we all know, it can be of different interests. One is public interest, the other one is private interest. And by this, I mean public interest are those that are considered not-for-profit organizations, where you are not focused too much on profit, but on doing well to society. And these organizations, having a not-for-profit organization does not mean the organization does not have revenue. The revenue that the organizations have, it is reapplied for the benefit of the public interest or the community or the cause that they defend. Now you have the private sector organizations, and those, yes, are for-profit organizations. They have the shareholders, and they need to respond to their shareholders' need. And while obviously we can reflect on what the government's organization look like, and it's a public sector organization because it's of public interest. It represents all of the constituents and the stakeholders. So what both organizations have in common is the stakeholder perspective. And stakeholder perspective means everybody who has a stake into that organization. So from public standpoint, we have the public in general is interested because we are citizens, we're affected one way or another. Government organizations cater to all the citizenship, especially here in Canada. Not-for-profit organizations for certain causes. For example, CIMMO, the Chartered Institute of Marketing and Management of Ontario. We take care of the marketers in Ontario. The cause is making the world a better place through marketing. So our focus is serving our public in the marketing, for the marketing cause. And the other organizations I sit in the board, like Polycultural, it's for settlement, for immigration settlement. So all the immigrants, we help them to settle here in Canada, and community services as well, home domestic violence, elderly issues, and so on. So, those of public interest have different funders, as we know. So the government can be one source of funding, but private citizens through donation or membership and so on. Private sector, we all know, they need to be present in the market. They need to deal with their customers through, transactional. I mean, they sell services, products and services and goods. Why am I saying that? Because depending on the nature of the organization, the level of impact and the mission in an emergency time like those can be heavily impacted, and it has a different weight depending on which organization we're talking about. Okay, so the private sector and how this organization can react and adapt to this new situation. And is there any change management model that can be catering for this situation or that situation, specifically for COVID-19? And asking the question always, was any organization ready for this reality? Were there any preparation for this kind of reality? And how the organization as a whole can react to this. So first I said there are two types of organization: public interest, private sector organization. The private sector organization, they have profit. The public sector organization, they have revenue, and then they apply all the profit for the benefit of the cause. Okay, the public sector organization is structured in different ways and have different mandate than the private sector organization. The public serves the public interest, the private serves the shareholders' interest. And whether these shareholders are, as families or individuals or group of people, which is the case of publicly listed companies, as you may know. Well, okay. So now that we talked about the nature of the organization, let's dig deeper into the organization itself and its structure and culture and context. And then again, I will reflect on both. I mean, we have the public and the private. And you tell me, I will speak, and then we will open up for question and answer. Like, I will speak for 30 minutes, and then 30 minutes we will leave it for you to ask the questions, because I think it shouldn't be one-way communication, okay? So I mentioned the type of organizations, public, private. I said the context is important, and we talked about not only the context, but how the organization react to emergent situation or catastrophe or natural disaster, and how this disaster can shape the behavior of this organization and its response to the situation that is, the organization is facing as a whole. But before we talk about the context, I would like to mention, what is the organization made of? Do you have any idea? Like, you can interact, like just unmute your your mic and tell me what is the organization is made of?
It's human resources. It's human.
It's human, yes. The organization is made out of three main elements, where the most important element is human. Because when we talk about behavior, we're talking about a behavior of a group of people, right? Behavior cannot be of machines, cannot be of processes. But as we know, organizations are made of people, infrastructure, and processes. These are the three major components. And obviously, when we talk people, we're talking about the customers, external stakeholders, internal stakeholders, employees. But when we focus on the organizational behavior, we're talking about how the external world will see the organization as one being, acting, for the purpose of their mission, vision, and values. And human beings, we are very sensitive, and we are social too, and we belong to different cultures. So when we talk about the organizational behavior, we need to understand also the organizational culture, because and by culture, what do we understand by what do you understand by culture? What is culture? Sorry, Malak, I'm inquiring your students here. Okay. This is the professor and me.
The way of working in the organization.
The way working in the organization.
The working conditions, ethics, and all.
The working conditions, ethics, yes, that makes sense. Anybody wants to jump in here? Huh? Okay, I will take this. Well, yes, organizational culture is a set of values shared by the organization's members. Like, we like, there are certain frameworks that are shaped by the individuals that make up this organization. So what we think is top-down setting, which means that the top administrators can define or determine the organizational culture. There are a lot of question marks around it. So the president wants the organizational culture to be like this. It doesn't work this way, because the culture is something that inherent to people, and people can help building up the culture of the organization. And obviously, the culture shapes the behavior. So if we as individuals that work at the organization, we have a good environment, good working place, we have good leadership, and then the leadership is the second step that I wanted to talk about. And you have a good ecosystem where you can be yourself, feeling connected to this ecosystem and of people and members of the same community. And in most organizations, welcome to XYZ organization's family, because we look at the organization from a group of people standpoint, and the relationship and the culture is a kind of similar to the culture of the family culture we have at home. Okay. And then this culture of the connection between the different cultures within the organization from different standpoint make up what we call the organizational culture. And the organizational culture shapes the organizational behavior. It's not determined by the president or the vice president or the upper echelon of the organization. It's determined by how the group of people that make this organization up works as a group, as an ecosystem together, regardless what the upper echelon wants. So by saying that, we analyzed the nature of organizations, said, okay, public and private. And we said organization is made of people, processes, and physical assets, which was infrastructure. And we said too that organizational culture, and I'm not sure if you can disagree with me. I want you to disagree with me. Critical thinking is something that we need to, it's not one voice. It's not like, I want you to disagree. Your generation voice is very important. It's actually the hope for humanity, so, and we said organizational culture shapes organizational behavior. But we said too that leadership has a role to play. And in organization, whether we have leaders or managers. And what is the difference between these two? Leaders and managers.
Guys, some participation, please. I'm on stake here.
What is the difference? Well, give me your, it doesn't need to be correct answer. I mean, we need to reflect on what's your views on,
Leaders are the one who motivates his subordinates, who show the way, and managers are those who like manage the stuffs, like the leader shows the way, and so, and the managers, they're gonna do, like, they will be managing the stuffs, like.
Wow, thank you. That's a great answer, actually. So leaders,
sorry,
go ahead, who's there? Go ahead.
This is Mavis. I was going to say leaders typically create the vision for the company, and managers will set like the goals towards working towards achieving that vision.
Well, that's very valid too. Any other insight?
Leaders who have followers, leaders are the persons who motivate the employees to take a work from them, while the managers are who just give a directions to achieve the goal and just assign the work.
Okay, that's fantastic answer too. That's great. We'll make a good connections between all of these points that you raised. Any other point before I move forward?
Leaders are the one who create leaders.
Leaders are the one who create leaders. I'm taking notes here. Okay. Any other contribution here? What about managers? So leaders are what I can see that you have a clear vision of leadership. What about the managers? What do they do?
I think even managers can also play a role of leaders.
Yes, they can. Absolutely. Nilmani, you want to say that? No?
So I think the leaders decide, like the leaders lead the role, like they make the rules and regulations, or like they show the path, and managers, they help us to go in that path. Like.
Okay, that's very good too. Yeah, well, leaders, they make the rules. We will reflect more on this, but let me tell you something. And again, I'm using my experience and scholarly studies as also a scholar in this area. So in most organizations, leaders and managers are seen depending on the context. Manager works on technical stuff. We have the processes. We need to deliver on our strategic plan, the key performance indicators that we promised, the action plans. So these are managerial technical activities that you need to, execute for the sake of the organization, correct? So you are managing the processes, you're managing the infrastructure, you're managing the people. Now, the managerial activity has much more to do with technical stuff. Leadership has to do with the human side of organization. And good leaders, good managers, as mentioned by someone here, maybe Raveen, I'm not sure, are great leaders and should be seen as role models. And that's why when, and as mentioned by many of you, leaders has to have followers. Like there's no leadership without followers. And the followers play a very important role in this. So we said, okay, two types of organizations, the public, the private. Then we said the behavior of the organization is shaped by the culture of its individual, the collective culture, but there is a certain value that is through the vision and mission of this organization that inspired by whom? By the leadership, those who lead this organization. That to motivate the human side of it, they need to be a role model. They need to inspire their people. At the same time, they need to manage their people. And managing the people means, oh, guys, we have targets. We have to respond with our mission and vision. We need to accomplish what we have promised, whether the cause is public, making the world a better place, or whether the cause of like putting money back in the shareholders' pocket. So, and both are connected. So a good leader, a good manager can be, normally is a great leader that inspires his followers, his employees, persuade them. It's not by fear, it's by persuasion, by care, by explaining, by educating, by moving forward with them. And not always good manager is a good leader. And it depends on the situation. Well, now we talked about, you know, the whole thing that Dr. Malak will spend the semester speaking about, I guess. And it's not an easy topic because human beings are very, very complicated in their nature, culture, and perception of the world. But what I think it's very important to understand, like the nature of the organization, the culture, what shapes the culture, the importance of leadership. And now we will be talking about emergencies, change. How do we respond to change? What, and the COVID-19 context, how is this context impacting the world? How organizations are being impacted by this, and how the culture is important in order to respond to these emergencies. Okay, so we spoke about the organization, public, private. Okay, we spoke about the organization culture. We said culture is shaped by the group of individuals and leadership too. Oh, and we spoke about the stakeholders. Now we're talking about, we will be focusing on the context, what's happening around the organization. So we have two sort of contexts. The normal context, which is a planned one. That's why we have our strategic plans. Say, well, let's prepare our, which by the way, 90% do not work. Okay, people say, well, let's do our strategic plan. Our goals are 1, X, Y, Z. And then you work out your actions around these plans. And you mobilize the whole organization towards the realization of these plans. So one is planned actions, and the other ones are unplanned actions. And well, guess what? I think the unplanned actions are heavily present in organizations. Improvisations you'll see here and there happening. So we have the controlled environment where we have objectives, goals, metrics. You measure all, and you think everything is working, and you do your best. We do our best in our organization to make this happen. And we have uncontrolled events that are happening. Well, as I said, for controlled event, we plan. Well, we have the strategic plans that will be reflected in areas like in finance plan, marketing plans. All the areas will be organized around the strategic plans. We all know what strategic plan is, right? It designs the direction, the main direction of the organization, the north. Where are we headed? What we want to be, the vision, mission, values, all of those things that you know, right? Now the action plans are, what are the actions that are necessary for us to take to get there? So what are the steps? And then, well, financially speaking, you know, the finance, we need funding for this, and this action. Marketing, you need to advertise, we need to launch new products. You know, operations, we need to take care of, the logistics and the supply chain and all of those things that are going on to serve well our customers or stakeholders and constituents in case of not-for-profit organizations. Well, and this controlled environment is okay. We monitor. We have the key performance, performance indicators, and we measure. And we say, okay, what's going on? Is that working? Not working? Do it again. Let's replan. But the unplanned event, that is what most organizations face, and it's the most challenging part because you're not prepared. You did not predict. Right? Remember, I'm not sure. Are the students bachelor or postgrad or degree? Bachelor? Oh, okay. So well, let's talk more openly about the concepts here. So not that the diploma students don't. It's not about that, but I mean not to overwhelm with conceptual issues, right? So when it comes for unplanned activities or emergencies, most organizations are not prepared. And why? Because you don't predict emergency. You don't know. Who knew like the COVID-19 was coming our way? And in December, everybody was celebrating, and the new year came in and nobody knew what's going to happen, right? So most organizations were not ready for this reality. Even medical organizations, those who are purpose serving the society in the medical field, the healthcare related system. Okay, so
Dr. Youssef, the internet has been cut.
Sorry about the interruption. So, and I was talking about the context, right? I mean, we talked about public, private missions. Organizations serve the public cause, serves the private shareholders cause, then the organizational culture that's shaped by the individual's culture and values, and the organizational values set by the leadership. And then we went to the context. How do we respond? And I said we have controlled response, which is strategic planning. We have uncontrolled response, which is emergency response, and crisis and change management. So, and I was saying that we will be using the COVID-19, and I think that's what Dr. Malak wanted to discuss, basically how organizations respond in times of crisis. And as we said, we have no control over this. Right? You have the economic crisis in 2008, nobody knew about it. We have the COVID-19 now, nobody knew about it. You may have a natural catastrophe, God forbid, and organizations are not ready. We know that in Haiti, what happened like a couple of years ago. The world was turned upside down. And upside down means like you have no control over the situation. So how organizations are supposed to respond to these events, and in all the levels? And is there anything that organizations can do to smooth the impact? Impact will happen. You cannot, there's no way to avoid, right? I mean, as a construction, you can build up a great building. In Japan, most buildings are ready for, tsunamis or for natural disasters, okay, earthquakes. But you have the project, you have the plan, you have the structure, but you never know how the response will be and what's the extent. You don't control the natural factors, hurricanes, volcanoes, all of those things, and plus this biological disaster or systemic disaster that we face. So in management science, there are specific, let's say, organizational response that should be set in place for crisis when they emerge. And that's what we call crisis management. So you're not ready, and we have all the organizational, the organization as a whole, with all of its capabilities, processes, people, and assets, everything in there, and then the stakeholders, shareholders. And then when the emergency strikes, and I'm talking about both types, the for-profit and not-for-profit, both have different mandates and different goals in responding to the crisis, but both sort of organizations are impacted. So when we say about change, so obviously we have changes here, right? I mean, we wake up in a day and the world is not the same. It's completely changed. So for change in controlled environment, we work on change management, which means in controlled environment, I can plan the change. So let's say I am moving my organization from market A to market B, or I am implementing a new technology infrastructure that will impact the behavior or the response of my organization to the external environment. So what I say, I have a new software, ERP, Enterprise Resources Planning. Okay, so people are used to work on papers, right? I mean, the notebooks, paper book, or Excel sheets. And now we're implementing new software. Well, that will impact their way of working. And we need to manage this change, which means, you know, let's plan for this. And then we will be working on, again, controlled environment. So, okay, we don't have the software. Let's do a pilot project, involve the people. Let's have a management, you know, let's manage this change, or management changing plan or change plan. And then we will be implementing that step by step, evaluating, and we have the feedback. So this is what I call controlled environment, because we have the control, like not all the control, but we have most of the control. In an uncontrolled environment, complexity is the way. So the science of complexity, it's a complex situation. And we all know the difference between a puzzle, a problem, and a mess. What is a puzzle? What the puzzle is? Huh?
Different units that come together to form something whole.
Great, yes. We put the pieces together, but you know, we have all the elements, so put the pieces. What is a problem?
A situation.
A situation?
Yeah.
That has different solutions, but it has solutions. Okay, so I can go to your college using QEW, but I have a problem to reach your college. So I have different ways to get to your class. Okay, and if we can't get to the class, like Dr. Malak is doing, what do we have? We have Zoom. So we can deliver the lecture. So problem has different solutions depending on your perspective and the context, right? What is a mess? What is a mess?
Deciding what solution to choose.
Deciding what solution to choose. Is there any, thank you. Is there any other insight? Huh? No?
When
Okay. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. I want to listen. I'm listening. Go ahead.
I was going to say disorganization.
Disorganization makes sense. What else? Okay. Mess is a problem that has no plausible solution, which is like earthquake. It's a mess because you don't control the variables. You have no idea how to start with the solution. You have no idea what nature is coming like with after that is. And tsunamis and natural disasters are considered mass, but also biological and ecosystem or natural things are considered mass. So and economic things, so things that we have no control over, we don't know how to solve the problem. It's a mess. So how do you classify COVID-19? Is it a mass problem or puzzle?
It's a huge mess.
It's a huge mess. It's a huge mess. It is. It is a mess. And as we know, there's nothing that we can do to predict how to mitigate this issue. Nobody knows, right? It's learning by doing, like what most health care organizations and pharmaceutical companies are trying to do. Every day we have different news about this, right? Yesterday they just said, they brought something new because things are being uncovered. We're learning on the go. So how organizations can respond during these times of difficulties? And is there any change management that can help? And how can you, work on both controlled and non-controlled methodologies to get used to the new normal? Everybody's talking about the new normal now. And how does it look like? So before I wrap up my conversation and start opening up to your question, I wanted to make sure that we understand that for masses, no plausible responses can be planned, but retaken or going back to normal can be planned. And here we need you understand. So in the mass, it happened. It is happening. It's the situation we have no control over. When it started happening, we learn on the go. But after taking account of what's going on and understanding how things are going, we can start planning to go back. And organizational impact, the organization will be impacted, and it has been impacted. If the organization is not for profit, well, people are not working anymore. We know that it impacted the organization in its behavior. People are staying home, and sometimes mental health issues you have, some financial issues you have, like people were laid off because the for-profit organizations were not making profit, and obviously, like their financial burden is very high. So what they did, they laid off a lot of people, and is this going to impact the organizational behavior? Sure, it will, right? Other organizations, they kept their employees, but they are like Conestoga, Humber, not-for-profit organization, governmental organization, healthcare system. I mean, every system was impacted differently depending on the nature of your operation. So public sector organizations now are mostly needed, and that's why they did not lay off, because they need to respond to these crises, whether these are healthcare management or mental health care management or educational institutions, or like these institutions are needed, government, so they are working. The impact was, okay, how do we work? How do we adapt to this new normal? So how do we deliver our class, for example, like brilliantly Dr. Malak is doing over Zoom, right? Sometimes we use Blackboard. I don't know which system you guys use, but I mean, there are ways of doing these things and to respond. Now, for-profit organizations, for sure they were impacted because they needed the money. The economical sustainability is an issue. And then some of them decided to keep their employees, and depending on the nature of this for-profit organization, for example, Walmart, they're doing well. Amazon, they're doing well because everything went from physical, we were talking about consumer behavior now. So the consumer behavior changed from physical to digital, right? Everybody is buying online now. So Amazon is doing very well, thank you. Walmart is doing very well. So the supply chain, food and essential services are doing well, but other small businesses are not. So the extent of the impact of COVID-19 on the organizational behavior is huge, especially on for-profit organizations. And again, even those who are making money and doing well as a business, like I mentioned, Walmart and Amazon, they were not ready because their supply chain was not ready. So they didn't have the truck drivers, they didn't have the employees for the shifts. So they started hiring like crazy because they needed this. So for certain organizations, the change, the emergency was, and I'm talking about this for-profit organization, was played in their favor. That their model is doing amazingly well. Whereas in other organizations like, you know, the hospitality industry, they were heavily impacted. And the responses need to be measured against what's happening, or how do you react to the context. And in both cases, in the hospitality industry and the supply chain industry for the food, you know, and goods industry, the responses need to be measured against, you know, the organizational capabilities, what they have, for instance, and how much their culture was impacted. And by culture, I mean people, right? So if you have those people, look, for Walmart, you add in more cultural element to your organizational culture, and it's reshaping the behavior. For others, they don't have the culture anymore because most people were laid off. Like Air Canada laid off 25,000 people or 30,000 people, Blue Jet, and so on. So for one organization, readapting the culture to the newcomers. For other organizations, was totally remaking the culture, because you're going to rehire these people, or you're going to recruit new people, or you're closing the doors. So no organizational culture, no whatsoever. And unfortunately, a lot of small businesses are feeling heavily this impact. Why? Because small businesses are not economically very well, are not very sustainable, because small businesses are like, they don't have the cash flow they need, they don't have the funding. These are family businesses normally, as we know. So basically, this is what I think organizations in a messy situation, as I said, like the natural catastrophe, or economic catastrophe, or biological catastrophe like we're living now, will be facing. And to wrap up, both for-profit have one sort of impact on their organizational culture and behavior, and the for-profit, not-for-profit, have different impact and different sort of responses. I'm not sure, Dr. Malak, if I covered what you wanted to say, but this is basically, I think, a contribution that I was willing to share with the students, and I'm opening now for questions and answers.
Thank you, Dr. Youssef. I enjoyed it myself, actually. I was, you know, what?
You're a friend. You're a friend. Friends are not like, are suspicious.
Yeah, please, guys, if you have any questions, please go ahead.
Thank you, Dr.
Hi, Charles, go ahead.
You don't have questions?
Okay, so what I was thinking is, so this impact, this mess, or this COVID has definitely had an impact on the organizational behavior. So as a result, the culture also changes. So how does this culture, or does this culture at all impacts the mission of a company, of an organization? So if they have to change the mission, then how does it go?
Well, and it's a very good question. Thank you, Nilmani. Well, let's take our families as a microcosmos example. The family, the whole household, is a great example of an enterprise. You know that, right? Of an organization. We have it. When we marry, if you're not married, get ready for it. You sign up, you sign up a contract, whether it's civil or social contract, whether in a church, synagogue, or, you know, temple, or mosque. You go for a ceremony. So it's an organization. And it's amazing how looking at the household can help us understanding the major elements of, you know, of organizational culture in a normal setting. Those organizations that are not household, for-profit or not for-profit. So yes, if we have an impact in our families, let's say God forbid, one of our family members got sick, or we lost one of our family members, or for some reason you have you know, disagreement within the family. What happens to the behavior of this microcosmos? It's completely affected by this, right? it's completely affected. And the same thing I understand happens with major organizations. A catastrophe like this one, when you have, organization members of this organization that are laid off or affected or are fearing, losing their jobs, or they are working from their households. You never know if they have the capabilities to do so. You never prepared for that. I mean, a lot of organizations, they move in towards working from home because it saves some money and resources and helps, in terms of productivity. And this is a different topic. But if one member of the organization is a living body, and that's the way we should see it. And if a member of this body got sick or affected, the whole body and behavior is shaped. And obviously the culture. So if you have a headache, you cannot deliver at your best, right? Or if you have a flu, or if you, God forbid, COVID-19, right? I mean, these are things that will be affecting your behavior. How do you go back to normal is a great question, Nilmani. How do you go back to normal? So there's a healing process. And although organizational culture exists as a norm, as a major social contract, as a vision that should be realized, when you see this organizational culture affected by, and behavior is obviously altered, because culturally we react differently to certain things, to different things. It depends, right? So when you see this, there's a healing process. And leadership should weigh in much more than management, in my opinion, which means leaders should come and inspire and heal and help and take by, their employees' hands and say, that's okay, we're gonna pass this, we're with you. The organization message should be very clear, saying, we will support you. These are difficult times. We care for you. We care about you and your beloved one. And then looking at this human element during these crises, in my opinion, is what makes organizations healthier than others in terms of behavior. Did I answer your question, Aman?
Yes, but here when we talk about COVID, I believe it is more about change than more about healing. So while getting into change, so will our mission for our organization also will change? So
no.
Expect the missions of different organizations to change because they had a different mission before, and because of this huge impact, if they have to change, so will their mission also will change?
No. Look, mission is long-term standing. Mission is why people should buy from your organization for not-for-profit, for not-for-profit, why people should, support your organization. And mission does not change. And when I say healing, I mean it. So if you work in an organization and the mission will not be altered, the mission will stay. You will adjust the operations, because unless you're changing the nature of your organization, you will not change the mission. The mission will stand because it's a long term. Okay, unless the organization ceases to exist. Yes. Now, how is the mental health of your employees? We're talking about productivity here. How was the impact of this whole COVID-19 thing on the families? Financially, psychologically. And how many, if your coworker is no longer there, how do you feel about it? Right? So it's not only caring for customers, it's caring for this internal stakeholders. How's your supplier? How was your supplier impacted? Are they willing to, are they going to be able to supply you with the things that are they still in business or not? So it's, yes, about organizational change. As I said before, you need to plan for the next steps and how do you move towards the new normal, reopening or retaking your operations. But it's a healing process, like in a battlefield, like in a war, in a war zone. The whole area was put down, and then after the smoke has gone, you wake up and say, who's alive, who got hurt, and And then after we, oh, okay, so everybody is okay, let's move forward. And that's what I was trying to say. Any other question? Whoa, that means like two things. I said things that nobody understood, or everybody is okay with the message.
Actually, you explained the things very well. It was great.
Thank you, Ravina. Thank you. I appreciate your feedback.
We are having a wonderful session.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, good to hear. That's nice. They made my day, right? I mean, I'm not in touch with my students now, so, but look, you, whether you came from abroad or you were born here, your generation is the hope. And you are the ones who will be changing the world that we live in. Take this mission seriously. Our hopes are on you, as hard as this may seem. And you are the ones who have this sensitivity towards the environment, social responsibility, profit and social mission, and all of those elements. So being in college nowadays, it's not only a privilege, but it is a responsibility towards not only your community, the country that you came from, but this country too that you are at, which is amazing, one of the best, if not the best in the world to be at these days. So, and carry this message and the change that we need as a social organization, as a country, as a community, as a society, with open-mindedness and care for each other. Because there's only one thing that can make, in my experience, organizations work: caring for and about people. And that means those people can be your customer, those people can be your people, your own employees, or those people can be your suppliers. And in all cases, if you care, you get cared back. If you love, you get love back. And this is the message that I want to leave with you, because we are living in a society where, unfortunately, discrimination, prejudice, bias, racism are being big part of what we're living today. But the hope is you guys that went to the street saying no to that, independently where did you come from, or who you are, or what's your religious background. It doesn't matter. What matters is humanity in your generation. It's in higher levels, and that's what gives me hope. And I'm sure that Dr. Malak shares the same hope that I do. So it was wonderful being with you guys. I really enjoyed the session. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to Dr. Malak, my good friend, for inviting me to be part of this.
Thank you so much, Dr. Youssef.
As well.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a wonderful day. Enjoy the day.
Thank you.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Have a good day.
You too.